A message from the pig.
No prisoners! Everyone dies! Blow the horn, bang the drum, the pig is coming to town! Stamp, 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 that's me on your head! I will crush you! The pig's men know no fear, the pig's men are almost here!
Man, try not to look quite so bored, Shaman. The great Bray Shaman here today, going to be the highlight of this video. Available from Total War Access, the same place where you get the 30th Anniversary Regiments of Renown, like the Eye of Morslib and the Destroyers of Drakwold. Myself against Turin here. High Elves versus Beastmen again. We've got Great Bray Shaman versus Dreadfoot Imric, so that should be interesting. Credit to Turin being a hero, taking Foot Imric in this battle. Of course, I've got the Eye of Morslib, Destroyers of Drakwold, plus 4 more Ungor Spearman Herd, one of them without shields, the rest with. Some Ungor Raiders, 2 Feral Manticores, of course, awesomely added to the Beastmen. 5 Hounds, including 2 Poison Hounds, currently chasing some Reavers out of the woods, and a couple of Centaurs with throwing axes. On the High Elf side, Imric on foot, not Tyrion. 2 Phoenix Guard, which is a rough draw against the Cygor there, but we've got some Silver Helms as well, some Shadow Warriors, Fire Mage on foot. I believe Turin intended to take her on the horse, and we'll see the result of that in a minute. Silver Helms with shields. Rahagor's Pride, decent enough against the Beastmen with their leadership debuff, but there's actually no terror from Turin. I really do think that Rahagor's Pride should cause terror, but that's neither here nor there. Immediately we're going to get an engagement, and the Bray Shaman's going to emerge from the woods, start to make his way over. The Bray Shaman, he's just a caster lord. He's got Arcane Conduit, and comes with your typical Beastmen Lores of Magic. Also has this little AoE debuff here, minus 5 melee attack, 10% charge speed and speed. Quite nice. But as we get this engagement underway here, obviously Reaver's losing out to just some massive Hounds. Then we kind of pull away from the Rahagor's Pride. We're going to try and pull them away from the Silver Helms here, and away from this whatever's going on there. Little buff. Dragon Horn being popped. That's the Mighty Roar, I guess. The leadership debuff. But anyway, we're able to turn around, kind of catch their Hogwarts Pride. And here, Melkoth's Mystifying Miasma to slow them down. Once the poison kicks in and the Manticore drops in, it's going to be a bad day. We've also got some Ungor Spearmen in here. Meanwhile, the front line, Ungor Spearmen getting absolutely crumped by Turin's front line of Phoenix Guard and whatnot. Nice burning head there, roasting out some Ungor Raiders. But the caster, being on foot, came over to support this fight, and now is getting beasted out by the chariot itself in melee. I love the color scheming as well, of course. The Bray Shamans, depending on their lore of magic, will... Nope, a little bit of a miscast there. Will be changed. I love the coloring, even on the pig, too, like the painted pig. That caster having a really bad time in life. Obviously, on the chariot, anti-infantry, great charge bonus with Primal Fury active. Not quite as strong as the Beast Lord on a chariot, obviously, but still very good. And yeah, here with the Floor of Shadows, the idea was to stack with his own speed debuff, with the Poison Hound's speed debuff, just to be able to catch out any high-value targets and drag them down. Also be able to slow the advance. It's kind of the spread Cygor style that I played in the past, where you just have a Cygor and a whole bunch of stuff everywhere, try and drag down your opponent. You can see Silver Helms getting hung up on the archers right here. Hounds are going to rush over and try and deal with them. Winning that mobility engagement over here so decisively was pretty important. That being said, both my Manticores are going to get pulled into Foot Imric here, and of course he's anti-large AP, has Halberd animations. Very cool Halberd animations at that. He is going to just absolutely massacre this Manticore, and given that it's enraged, I can't pull it out there. Enfeebling Foe unfortunately gets miscast onto the Reavers rather than on Imric. A little bit of a misclick on my part, but that's fine. Given the Imric's on foot, great Bray Shaman. I mean, 77 speed on his chariot could probably get away from a lot of heavy cavalry lords. I think high elf heavy cavalry lords are faster. I know for sure Tyrion is. I think Imric is as well. But still, you can see the Centaurs having taken some heat, just kind of hanging around in the periphery. We're going to use them to try rear charge and whatnot. Same thing. These Hounds, they are quite tattered at this point, but chasing routing units going to be pretty decent. Trying to bail out the Manticores from Imric, but again, the Enrage pops. Scroll of Shielding from the Great Bray Shaman does help keep this Manticore alive a little bit longer, and we're going to do some drive-bys here with the Chariot. It should be said, the Razorgore Chariot does have pretty strong animations in general. So that is a benefit. It's a pretty decent mount. Chariot mounts are not, you know, quite on par with a lot of monster mounts, but at the same time, they can be good in situations where monster mounts are not, because they're relatively small targets, and their mass is also quite good. They don't have nearly the same issues with the infantry mass problem that a lot of other units have. Bray Shaman charging over here. In the background, that Cygor still yeeting stones into the Phoenix Guard, as it should be. And we've got some hounds in pursuit as well. Phoenix Guard getting routed by just hordes of Ungors. So far, been able to keep Great Bray Shaman safe. I mean, I haven't been able to deal with Imric much, but I figure if we get rid of the entire army, probably the Eye of Morslib and the Caster together can finish off Imric. I'm a little bit worried about my loss of Manticores here, but balance power definitely showing in my favor as we kind of use the very tattered Manticore to drop down, get some terror routes here. Silverhelm's going to get a nice charge into the Centaurs with throwing axes, but they're so low here, the Centaurs might actually win this engagement. But yeah, Hounds just ping-ponging around too, not staying in combat. I say ping-pong, they're actually fleeing right now. And just mass Ungol Raider fire, dragging down those Spearmen. Very cost-effective. Ungol Raiders, just such a good unit even still. Same with Cygors. Some people are going to get a forget about Cygors with all the new stuff coming, but you should not sleep on them. Still going to be just as strong as they were before. And I have more sleep, especially so, with that hard snare, which I have not had to use yet at all. It's been able to control Turin's movements with numbers and space primarily. A little bit of spell action as well, of course. Great Bray Shaman. Doesn't cost that much. On the Chariot, I want to say this Chariot specifically is about 1,000 base cost. It does have access to the Tuskor Chariot. I'm not going to talk too much about it today because I'm not 100% sure if I'm supposed to yet or not. But it is there. Just be aware that he does have access to that as well. But the Razor Gore definitely a little bit higher tier, a little bit more HP and armor and everything else. 100 armor is actually very decent for a Caster Lord. Especially given how bad his stats are, you know, not on the mount. We'll take a look at that in just a minute. But the Phoenix Guard, finally getting the Warp Gaze on them. It's frozen in place. They get gatted by Ungors. Handful more Hounds here as well. Things are looking pretty good for me. We're going to fast forward just a little bit through this cleanup phase as the Great Bray Shaman and the Ungol Raiders proved to be too much for this one sad unit of Spearmen here. Imric also trying to stay close, give him some support. But enfeebling foe correctly placed this time. Cygor is going to come in. Gets Lord of Dragons on the Cygor, so he's got now 14 melee attack, but a nice rear charge from the Shaman. Of course, bonus versus infantry definitely applies to Imric, who is just got run over there somewhere. There he is. Imric on foot. Not even possible in the campaign. I think he literally starts on the horse mount that you cannot choose to dismount. So interesting choice, but a fun one nonetheless. And that is going to be a victory. A little bit of a mean build for Turin, but I do think, you know, in these very wide Beastman builds, being able to take a caster Lord in one will be pretty beneficial. With flying Malagor now, I mean, he's going to be the meta kind of caster Lord in a lot of matchups, but if you still want a full lore of whatever lore, either Death, Shadows, Wild, or Beasts, you can still take this guy on the Chariot. He's got some decent options. A little bit squishy. You got to be careful of being gooned, certainly. But with some of the Beastman's new tools, able to keep that from happening better than ever. We'll be jumping into the DLC stuff tomorrow, for those of you guys wondering. Nice Penetrable Pendulum to finish things off. Had another one earlier on the Shadow Warriors that I did not showcase, but there you go. Just to spitefully finish those Spearmen. A couple more drive-bys on Imric. He's going to get terrified, and that's games. Very well played to Turin. Again, credit to him being a hero. Taking an infantry halberd build against the Beastmen. Definitely a rough time. Cygor somehow actually didn't pay out that much value, but the Hounds winning that, like I said, winning that mobility engagement pretty decisively was a great benefit to me with these Hounds, and the Manticores, even though they also didn't pay for themselves. In fact, a lot of my units didn't pay for themselves, funny enough. The Ungor Raiders definitely did. They were cost-effective here. Some of the Ungor Spearman herds did, and not too bad for the Bray Shaman. 1720 on value, considering he's maybe like 1600. We can take a look at that in just a second. Imric does pretty decently also, considering how cheap he is probably on foot. Shadow Warrior is pretty decent in this matchup. Silverhelms also do alright. The cavalry engagement was pretty rough. For Hogwarts Pride, honestly should cause terror. Would give High Elves a cheap terror unit and make them actually useful. But anyway, let's not talk too much about that right now. Instead, I've got another replay to show you guys, so let's get to it. This time we got the Lore Wild Bro with that green color scheme, and he's got like a white base hood thing on. Couple Gorbles, couple Manticores. So this is another idea I had with this guy. It's just going relatively cheap single entity spam. In the meta, accordingly, you know, some people right now, it's pretty strong. But will it be strong against Archaon's Warriors of Chaos? We've got 5 Ungor Spearmen Herd here. Again, Destroyers of Drakwild, one of them. Mobile Force of Poison Warhounds and Centaurs here. And then, yeah, all the single entities. On the side of the Warriors of Chaos, led by Samurai Warrior and Archaon here. He's got a couple of Chaos Knights with lances. Some Marauder Horsemen. 3 Chaos Spawn. Halberds and some Marauders. Looks like 4 Marauders, so pretty strong. Warriors of Chaos build, I have to say. No terror, potentially weak against the Beastmen, but let's see how I can do here. Gonna get started with some anti-infantry fun as the Spawn and the Spearman Herd come into contact here with some Marauders mixed in as well. Over here on this side, one of the Spearman Herd took severe damage from the Javelins. I was actually very surprised there. And the Chariot here doesn't have a lot of elite armored infantry to go after, so not exactly an ideal situation, but nice burning head from Samurai Warrior as well. And this mobile engagement here, I'm going to try and catch some of his units, but you see this Centaur kind of gets caught up. Nice maneuver here by the Halberds to kind of block my advance as well. The Hounds, again, aren't really going to get through to the Marauder Horsemen, and there's also these Chaos Knights on station that I'm going to attempt to charge with the Manticores to see if I can't interrupt their charge. We will start chewing off a few models there. Bray Shaman also, again, going to charge in. We're going to summon up a Manticore here just to kind of discourage Archaon from trying to snipe the Grey Shaman. Also, you know, melee monster potentially against cavalry is pretty good here, but my Hounds are getting routed very quickly. Spearmen, likewise, generally having a pretty rough go of it. I mean, the Spawn, you know, just Spearmen versus Spawn, they would trade okay, but when you have the Marauders mixed in there, it's not great for them. Archaon does end up taking some damage, but Gorble and both the Gorbles and both the Manticores end up getting kind of mixed up in this blob, except this one Manticore. And 1v1, this is not a good engagement for this poor Manticore, not to mention a bunch of Horsemen moving in as well now. What was it? Viletide wasn't quite as good as I wanted it to be. They did buff Viletide's damage, it looks like, but also made it more expensive. Now the Overcast, I don't think is worth it, but anyway, that Manticore is going to get kind of pounded out there. Still got some tools, though. Centaurs and Hounds going to push out and try and do some damage to the Horsemen. Another nice burning head placement, actually great RNG as well, as it curves almost exclusively into... Yeah, I don't think it even touched the Horsemen there at all, so that's basically perfect RNG. So, pretty good. The Cygor summon's almost gone, and both the Gorbles are taking significant damage, but we've just about got rid of the Chaos Knights as well. Halberds could be a little bit of a problem, but another Viletide here. Let's check the damage. It's okay. It's not great. Kind of wish I had taken, what's it called? The big blob bunker buster that I took against the Vampire Counts. Traderkin, that's it. Kind of wishing I had taken Traderkin here, because it would have been much, much better against the Spawn blob, and obviously would have dealt some pretty significant damage to Archaon too, which, you know, I think I could possibly kill the rest of this army here. Archaon's going to be a pretty significant issue, I feel. Also kind of wish I would have brought, like, Spirit Leech and Fate of Buna, Bray Shaman in this situation. Just, you know, Fate of Buna the Knights and or the Halberds, or even just Fate of Buna the Halberds, Spirit Leech the Knights, or even Spirit Leech Archaon would have been helpful in this situation. But Warriors of Chaos units do get terrified. Nice, timely Manticore rear charge. And the Gorbles still have enough HP. I figure if I get all 4 of these single entities matched up on Archaon, I could possibly take him down, but the Spawn, the mass of the Spawn is a problem. There's also still all these Marauder Horsemen as well. Might be able to catch some up with the Centaurs, looks like we do, and the Hounds. This Manticore also gets enraged. It gets enraged by the Javelins over into them, which is not great for me. Nice charge from the Centaurs, though, so hopefully I can finish off this skirmish cav and start to even out the mobility engagement a little bit, but while that's happening, Manticore is not present for this single entity fight, and one thing about Gorbles is because of their animations, they have a tendency to, like, roll and push and kind of go all over the place. It's really hard for both of them to actually stay in combat with Archaon at the same time. Like, they keep pushing the other one out of the way, and then they, you know, stack up on each other like that, and don't actually both engage. So what this means is Archaon is effectively getting, like, 1v1s a lot of the time, even though it looks like a 2v1, because the Gorbals animations are just consistently failing me here. So that's great. But Bray Shaman's still alive, and the cavalry did come back from route. Not a great situation for me, but maybe we can win out this engagement here. Both the Gorbals are taking damage from the charge bonus there, and the spawn are also moving in, so I want to try and finish this engagement quickly. Again, kicking myself for not bringing Traderkin. But anyway, Centaurs are going to move in for a little bit of a rear charge. Burning Head and Vile Tide both being used here. Vile Tide, again, does a little bit, not quite what I want it to. But we're going to see if we can't bail some of these units out. Finally, the Knights are routed. This unit of Knight looks like is routed, so things are very, very close at this point. Looking pretty decent. But then Archaon comes in. All it takes for him is a couple of hits on these characters, and he could probably pull this out. So I'm going to pull away, try and get back to my Spearman support here, try and utilize the rest of these great, the Centaurs of Throwing Axes. Handful of spears scattered around as well. I think the Manticore might actually be back just about. Yep. Finished off those horsemen finally. Took a lot of damage in the process, but things are looking pretty desperate. Let's see if I can somehow pull it out here. I'm going to go into kite mode a little bit here with my throwing axes. So we'll fast forward somewhat through that. Nice fireball, honestly, from Archaon. Doesn't quite route the great Bray Shaman, but Archaon trying to hang himself out here as bait. Also dodging some of the throwing axes very well. The Chaos Marauders, a little bit of miss micro from me, are going to get into contact with those Centaurs. Not great. But the Halberds do get routed here. And again, just avoiding melee combat as long as I still have ammunition. Unfortunately, Archaon's fast enough to actually catch poor Gorbal and basically finish him off. Centaurs try and screen, but it's just not enough. So we're going to try and keep kiting. Use the Terror of the Manticore to our advantage. Try and get rid of this very exposed Chaos Marauder here. We're going to get quickly terrified. But the balance of power, once Gorbal routed, and once these Centaurs throwing axes ran out of ammunition, things are starting to tilt more and more against me. So ends up being pretty close here, but I'm not too confident. Let's see, maybe if I get a good charge and finish off Archaon. The spawn will be tricky, but maybe all of this Spearman eventually drags them down in a surround. Marauders are gone. One more Marauder left. And the two spawn and Archaon. But I miss micro a little bit. Archaon charges, kills literally one of the Centaurs with throwing axes, and then they're probably going to throw their last volley here. Nope, the other Centaurs in fact charge in. Going to take a few more hits, probably triggering army losses. Let's see, maybe not. Maybe I can get the Manticore into combat here. Maybe not. Let's see. It is going to be a very good victory for me if I manage to pull it out, but it's not looking great right now. Archaon again charges the Spearman. Burning Head, very well placed. Actually will probably hit the Manticore. Yep, the leadership debuff does hit the Manticore, and one hit with the Slayer of Kings, and that pretty much tilts it. Manticore is going to rout. Gorbal's probably going to rout as soon as he gets close to Archaon. Yep. And then everything kind of cascades from there into army losses. So, great game to Samurai Warrior. Honestly, a little bit of wrong spell selection for me. The Cygor summon was nice on paper, but definitely should have had Traderkin instead. And that is something to learn, is kind of correct spell selection, obviously, when you're taking a Caster Lord. Super important. But anyway, it was still a pretty good game, have to say. Great Bray Shaman just about paid for himself. We'll have to double check his value. Gorbals, one of them paid for themselves, one of them did not. Gorbal's going to be okay going forward, but he still has some inherent issues that unfortunately I don't think they're able to fix. But Centaurs with throwing axes did awesome, certainly. Manticores look impressive, but did not actually pay for themselves. So there's that. Samurai Warriors side, Archaon beasting out 3,500 value. Man, he is a scary character. Lances also doing good enough support, helping Archaon out. Chaos Spawn also do pretty solid. But anyway, let's talk a little bit more about the Great Bray Shaman and some possible build combinations here. So I had saved a few builds. This is sort of the modification of the one I had just taken there. where I've instead swapped in Bray, Shaman, Lore of Death, and I also got 2 Bestigor Herd. Since great weapons trade pretty well into cavalry, I figure Chaos Knights might have a bad time against them, and also they can potentially trade better against Spawn. I don't really know. We'll see. But anyway, you can see here I switched out for Spirit Leech Beta Boring, which you definitely can do. He also does have Forbidden Rod, which is completely useless, considering it's a low leadership faction and this is something that literally does damage to your Lord. I don't find it to be a very appealing option. I don't know if I would ever take that. Likewise, this one right here, it's okay. I mean, 10% speed and charge speed is not a lot. 5 melee attack is not a lot. Considering how much you pay for it, this is probably the first thing I would come in and cut if I was really trying to, like, close cost optimize. But anyway, another variation here. This is the Ultra Summon Cygor build, right? You've got the 2 Cygors, and then you summon another Cygor here. And this is all, granted, like, just Bray Shaman plus Manticore, right? This is not even including any of the DLC stuff, which again we'll get to tomorrow. And then this one here is the one I used against Turin with the Lore of Shadows. Of course, you've also got Lore of Beasts as well. It should be said that Manticore summons did get, once again, nerfed. Now cost 20 Winds of Magic. So if you're trying to summon a monster, I mean, Cygor summons only 18 Winds of Magic, right? So might be more cost effective in that way. But certainly something to consider. You have access to all these Lords of Magic. And yeah, Caster Lord, which is great. You can go really wide like this with a lot of mid to low tier units and get some pretty good battles out of it. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below, though. Do you think the Great Bray Shaman is going to be wildly useful? Do you see him being, completely useless? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Hopefully you enjoyed. If you like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification button every time I upload a new video. You'll be notified. Thanks again. See you next time.